Hey friends, it's Dr. Dre, and if you don't know my shenanigans, I have a 60-week video series to help my menopausal friends lose weight, and I call my channel A Better Way MD TV, and I want to welcome you to week 24. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've really been focused on the world of emotions and trying to sense how to recognize them, become aware of them, and allow them to exist in our body instead of fighting them or smushing them down or resisting them or avoiding them, which I like to do with food at times, and you might too. So we're going to talk about some physically uncomfortable feelings this week, and this will be the last of the emotion series for a while. But first, I'm going to tell you a story. I was coming back from Evansville the other day. I was kind of rushing because I had an appointment and I didn't want to be late. I get to the parking lot and I realized that the area in front of the doorway had about that much water in front. Now, I didn't want to get my shoes and pants wet, so I decided to skirt around the water, but it was a solid sheet of ice. Now, I live in Kentucky, so the ice is probably about that thick. So I thought it would be pretty safe to go across. And I'm walking across it, and all of a sudden I hear the crack and feel my foot go down. And then I feel the crack and my other foot go down. And I knew that I was going to get wet feet. So I leapt to the sidewalk for safety. And guess what? The sidewalk was also a solid sheet of ice. So I hit that sidewalk and bam! I landed on my butt, on my back, and I just laid there for a minute. And so at first I had the physical sensation of pain. And then it was immediately followed by emotional pain from feeling, first of all, humiliated because I had fallen. Here I was trying to be Joe Cool, and then I was Joe Fool on my back. I was also angry that I fell, and there was terror when I was in the air. So I had all these feelings kind of rushing over me. And while I'm laying there processing it, I also realized that I have hit the ground so hard that I peed all over myself. So I ended up with wet pants anyway, and I didn't really want to have wet pants that way. So then I was going to walk into my appointment, and I was going to be humiliated. Fortunately, though, what I didn't tell you was that it was my appointment for a massage, and so I knew I could clean up, and I wouldn't have pants on anyway. So it was all going to work out in the end. But I thought this was a great way to, number one, make you laugh, and number two, to introduce the group of feelings that are really physically uncomfortable. Things like terror and embarrassment, disempowered, humiliation, shame, guilt. And I call these fear-based feelings because they are rooted in fear. Shame is just the fear that there's something wrong with you. Guilt, the fear that you've done something wrong. Rejection, the fear that you're going to be separated and isolated from the group, which previously would have meant sure and certain death. So they're all kind of rooted in that initial fear. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but first I want to do an exercise. I want you to close your eyes. And I'm going to say those feelings, and I want to see if you can actually generate the physical sensation that any of them would typically cause. So let's start with anger. How about disappointment? What does rejection feel like to you? About guilt, shame, vulnerability, embarrassment? All of those can really create a for real bad feeling. So let's talk about the biology so you can understand why they physically feel so bad and why we all want to really avoid having to feel them because they are uncomfortable. Now, fear is your body's way of telling you that you're fixing to die. And it sets off this whole reaction that triggers a fight or flight reaction in your body. So you will sense something, and it is like primitive and it happens so quick that there isn't prefrontal cortex thinking of this. You have, like, let's say you see something, you don't even recognize what it is, but that sense will hit your amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain. It sends off an SOS signal to the hypothalamus, which is kind of the command center of your brain, which sends a signal through the sympathetic nervous system to your adrenal glands, and the adrenals release adrenaline, or what you also know as epinephrine. And that is what creates the physical feeling. Your heart rate goes up. Your respiratory rate goes up. Your blood pressure goes up. your oxygen level to your brain goes up. So your senses are really heightened. And if you've ever been terrified, you'll know, because it's like time just slows down. It is, and everything is crystal clear. Now, of course, if something is scary happening, like somebody's chasing you with a butcher knife, you're going to feel fear. But we also feel fear on kind of a step down level, but it sends off a similar reaction. So rejection, shame, guilt, humiliation, disempowered, disappointment, anger, they all do a similar reaction. Maybe not to the degree of being chased with a butcher knife, but like, I remember being on rounds as a medical student, and the attending would be asking questions, and I knew that when they got to me, like, I would not know the answer, and my mouth would get dry and my heart would speed up, and by the time they got to me, whether I knew the answer or not, I wasn't going to know the answer because I was terrified. So, and humiliated and embarrassed and all of the things, and it was just so physically uncomfortable that I really wanted to avoid those type of feelings. And so one of the ways that I learned to avoid the really uncomfortable feelings was to eat. And I have a kind of a funny example. So every great once in a while, I get really angry at my husband, and I noticed that I would find myself at the pantry looking for something to eat, looking for an Oreo to pop into my mouth. And I thought that was really weird. Like, why would I get angry and then eat? And then I realized that anger as a fear-based emotion, I was afraid of being rejected. I was afraid that it meant something was wrong with my relationship or something wrong with me. And so I was responding to that chemical reaction and the physical sensation by avoiding it with food. So what I want us to do this week is really work on identifying what your fear-based emotions are. What triggers that sympathetic reaction in your body? And write them down. And maybe you have the same ones, maybe you have different ones. And practice feeling that feeling. And I know you're like, okay, wait a minute, hold on, how can you do that? Well, you find ways to do it. So maybe if you get really embarrassed or humiliated when you speak in front of a group of people, maybe try to speak in front of a few small individuals that are your coworkers. To kind of give you that sensation of embarrassment. So I like to practice rejection because that's a really hard one for me to want to feel. But I have the perfect way to do it. I have a 14-year-old son, and sometimes I just walk up to him and go, "Hey, Jaxie Boo, how about a hug for your mama?" And like, you can tell by the expression on his face, there's so much disdain for me. And immediately my brain is like, your son doesn't love you. And I feel all rejected. And like, it does create that sensation. So I can practice feeling rejection and learning that it doesn't matter how bad the feelings are. It's just it's a physical reaction to a chemical reaction. That's all it is. It goes away. It's not going to kill me. I know my body thinks I'm going to die, but really that's just the fight or flight reaction. And once I break that apart, it's easier to experience those feelings, allow them to exist within me, and not avoiding them by eating them. And I'm telling you what, friends, if you can do that one skill of learning how to feel all of your feelings, no matter how frightening they may first appear, you're going to be able to kick emotional eating to the curb. All right. So that's what I got for you this week. You get to practice feeling like crap for a while, but it's also a good exercise for you to learn that feelings really don't hurt you. And I will see you next week. So take care, friends. And the Freckle says take care too.